3, 4.
Welcome to Off Panel, Sketch.com's creator-centric podcast. With last week's artist survey being such a big talking point recently, I want to bring an artist on to talk about what it's like being an artist today and how one moves from starting out to finding financial success. This week's guest is none other than Declan Shalvey, the artist of Injection at Image Comics. Thanks for coming on, Declan.
Thanks for having me, David.
Declan, we're going to start with the simple question, one you've probably been asked many, many times, and it's what made you first want to get into comics?
Oh, God.
Didn't expect that one?
No, I didn't. What? I can't remember. I really can't remember. I just always. I think I was drawing comics before I really knew what comics were. Like I think I was reading Disney comics and Asterix and stuff. But I always wanted to draw, and there were drawings and told a story, and I just was doing it myself. So I don't recall a moment where I'm like, this is going to be what I do, but it was just something I was always doing.
Yeah.
I think I read, as I got into American comics, and I was copying that stuff, I read an interview with, I think it was Andy Kubert, and he said how much money he made in a year, or maybe a contract he sold, and I went into my mum, I was like, is this a lot of money? Because I had no concept, and yeah. My mum was like, yeah, that's a lot of money. I was like, huh. So this could be my job. And she's like, I guess so. So once I knew it was something where I could probably be paid to do it, maybe in my brain then I was like, well, this is what I would like to do. Not like that's what I will do, because again, this is an American artist and I lived in feckin' west of Ireland. So it's not like it's a natural career choice. But knowing that, I could actually be paid to do what I really liked doing, I think maybe in my head that's when I realized that it could be a career.
Yeah, I think that, anything when you're a kid, it's like I played baseball a lot when I was a kid, and the idea that I could actually do that for a living and apparently make millions of dollars, I was like, I'm going to be a baseball player.
Yeah. And then you were.
Exactly, which is why on my road trip with the Seattle Mariners, I am currently doing this podcast.
As regards to make them, I think it just came naturally to me because I loved drawing and I guess I loved telling, stories that like two panels together. It's not just like a drawing of a torso. Every kid just draws a head and a torso, and that's it. But I think one time when I actually told a story, there was something really rewarding about that, which is why, even now as I do more cover work, and it's great fun to do, it's just not as rewarding as actually crafting a story.
So you were actually making your own stories when you were a kid?
I wasn't like telling original stories, but like I was doing my own X-Men adventures or my own Star Trek stories or my own, I took what I saw on TV and did my own stuff. And then the inevitable thing of making your own superheroes, and which are all complete knockoffs of X-Men or Spider-Man or whatever it was. But I was just doing my own ones because, it's not like, I guess in a way, the amount of media that is available now wasn't there then. So like if cartoons were over, you couldn't just put on like Netflix and watch more cartoons. You had to entertain yourself to a degree, or wait until some TV shows on later on. You had to occupy yourself. So I would just make my own ones since there were none available to me. I guess that means nobody's going to make stuff anymore because everyone's so busy watching stuff,
I actually do think that is a common fear. I've read articles about that, but no, I think that's it's a natural progression. You start watching media and then you're like, oh, I'm going to make my own versions of that. I used to draw my own X-Men comics. They're probably not as good as your ones, but
I don't know. Mine were pretty bad.
Well, so once you realized that, you wanted to make this a career, this is something that you could do, but, you're that guy from West Ireland and you don't exactly have the Andy Kubert connections. Is there one thing you can look back on as the thing that you really think was your big break in comics?
Well, there was
not necessarily just career-wise, but it could be something else.
I think when I finished college, So I studied art, fine art in Limerick, and it's not, the education system in Ireland is different. College is extremely inexpensive. It's practically free compared to how things are in America. So I had some debts. I had like maybe a couple of thousand I owed to my stepdad or whatever. So I took a job after I finished college, and I was working construction in this crap hole, and it was just awful. And I remember thinking to myself, because what happens in college is you get distracted, you meet girls, and you discover alcohol and whatnot, and you don't, the creative endeavors aren't what they were, and you're living your life and growing up. But I remember I was shoveling. I was like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life, and I really want to do comics. So why am I doing that right now? Why am I just concentrating on this and spending working really hard and spending all the money like in the pub at the weekend? Like what? I think I had a bit of an epiphany of like, if I really do want to do this, I need to start pursuing it, which is the difference before college, whereas it was just an aspiration and I had no idea how to make it a career. So I went to art college. So I had that epiphany after art college. And not long afterwards, I met, I do my own research, and I saw there was a small gaming convention in Belfast. So I went up to Belfast, which for me was very scary because I'd never been up there before. And as far as I knew, there was going to be Protestants jumping out of bushes to attack me. But and I met PJ Holden, and I showed him my stuff, and he said, this is really promising. And he told me, you will be a comic book artist. And for me, I remember saying, you think so? He's like, well, you're what age are you now? You're 21, 22. You haven't stopped, so it's just a matter of time and, time or luck, or it will happen for you. Clearly, it's just, going to be a timing issue. And that for me was huge, because I think I come from a culture in Ireland where, huge things like that, to be an actor or to be a writer or to be an artist, they're really encouraged as a hobby, but not as a job. It's like you should work in a bank, or you should be a teacher, or there's this kind of culture of a job for life, which has really, really changed in the last few years since the recession and whatnot. But to get that kind of confirmation of like, this is something you will do, was very, very big for me. It really, really, really changed my headspace, because once I knew that it really was possible, that wasn't just an aspiration, and if I worked hard at it, I could do it. And this is before any published work. This is before anything at all. But I remember that was a really, really big moment for me. I'd say he's kicking himself now, PJ, but he should have just told me give up, and I would have given up. But that was really, really big for me, and it really had a big impact, more so than like a job did, or what, it just informed my worldview,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mom used to tell me that I could be a comic artist, but I never really took her seriously because she didn't really know comics that well. But an artist like PJ, saying that's a hell of a thing. That's got to be, it's got to. I think a lot of times, being successful at something is really built around confidence, and having somebody like PJ saying that, I'm sure that infused you with quite a bit of confidence that you can make it work.
Yeah, it did, because confidence isn't really something I really had in spades, And I saw guys like John McCrae and Garth Dennis, like they were from the north and they were making comics. So I knew it was possible, because people would just like in my day-to-day life go like, oh, like, is there any money in that? And you'd be like, oh, like, I guess so. These people seem to be doing it every month. And seeing that there were Irish guys doing it made me realize that maybe it was something I could do too. That was that was a big deal. But like actually meeting an artist who was working for 2000 AD, who was a professional, who spelt it out for me that way, was a much bigger difference than my friends saying, "Oh, you could totally draw comics. These are brilliant."
No, yeah.
To whatever it was you're drawing. There's a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, working on Injection, coming off Moon Knight, you've had a number of big projects behind you. You've made a pretty good career for yourself. But is there a moment you can look back on and say, like, a moment where you said, "Okay, I think I've made it. I'm in." Or even have you had that yet?
Yeah, no. I know. I have had it at this stage, but it's like it's incremental steps. I've always felt I'm taking steps up a ladder, and there's little notes like the first time you get something published. Like I did a black and white comic which was like there was only like a few hundred copies printed, but like then that changes you from being an amateur to somebody who's actually made a comic,
Yeah.
but I didn't get paid for it, so it's professional. So then the next hurdle is getting paid for something instead of doing it for free, and then the next hurdle is, you know, being paid by an actual legitimate publisher, and then the next one is depending on your aspirations. Like I always wanted to work for Marvel. So I would say that, well, 28 Days Later was the first time I got published in America, because that was another hurdle, because I was working in the UK market. So you always, you know, you have these ultimate aspirations like working for Marvel, but every time I took a step up, it felt more like I was in and more like I was in. But I mean, I have to say, when I got my artboard for Marvel, and, you know, there on top it says like book, page number, issue, and artist name, and when I wrote like Declan Shalvey and the artist spell, I mean, that was huge for me, and I was doing it in the room where I would have spent all my teenage years drawing, you know, Marvel comics or, you know, Marvel characters for fun. I happened to be back staying with my mum at the time, and that's when I was drawing that and writing my name, and I realized, oh, this is Everest.
Yeah.
And I've climbed it. You know, because drawing comics doesn't necessarily mean Marvel, DC. You could be doing webcomics, or could be so many things. And even if that is your goal to actually get there, the odds are against you. So it was really, really weird once I realized this is the mountain that couldn't necessarily climb, and now I'm on top of it. It was actually not depressing, but a little bit kind of there's a hollowness to it of like, now what? Like, is that
new
it?
Everest.
Yeah, exactly. Because most people don't even get to one, climb their Everest, two, reach the top. You know, I'm not that I'm brilliant because I have. Maybe it's just opportunity, or maybe there's a helicopter taking me half the way. But to even get to the top is so rare. Then there was this whole new challenge, like, but I think it's like the Homer Simpson thing when he climbs this mountain and he gets to the top, and he's delighted, but then the clouds clear and there's a whole other mountain on top of it. Like, it's probably a good analogy, because once you get there, you know, you could either just become complacent and just be happy to just draw whatever, which is fine, but you know, ultimately for your own sake, you want to have more challenges. So then it's like, you know, I don't want to do, you know, I want to do more than just a fill-in issue. I want to do an arc, and then you want to do an arc. You want to do your own covers, and, you know, you kind of need to keep trying to create more challenges for yourself, or more things to build up towards. So for me, after Moon Knight, which was a big thing, is I want to do my own, you know, issue one and develop my own series, and then I got to do that. So the next step is not to do just a fill-in run on another book, but to do a longer series. So when Warren suggested we do a creator-owned, I'm like, well, how about like a longer kind of running book? So now the plan is to do 25 issues and like have an actual body of work. And I think that in a way is going to be the max. But then after that, who knows what the hell I'm going to want to do, you know? But it is, I mean, it's great that I've, you know, I can say like, oh, you just need to have bigger goals. But I mean, I've also been very fortunate that I've had the opportunity to make those decisions, you know. You know, it's not like everyone gets the opportunity to have Warren Ellis offer you create their own series, you know. So I can't really go like, well, what you got to do is, I mean, I was very lucky to have that opportunity, and I made the most of it, and I've tried to make the most of every opportunity. I guess you really have to be the best manager for your career as possible, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I went off on a tangent.
No. It was kind of actually the path I was going to go down anyways. I do think that if there was like a process guide to eventually working with Warren Ellis, there'd be a lot of people that were way too intimidated to take that.
Oh, well, yeah, but what do you do? Say no? Like,
exactly.
Like, you know, you can either say yes out of braveness or yes out of terror. You know?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I imagined that if like Warren Ellis was like, David, I want you to work with me, I would probably just kind of stare catatonic at my screen for like a good minute or two before I like moved down that path. But there'd be a little intimidation there. Yeah,
I'll admit, I read the email of like, it was a one sentence email, but I read that a few times before it really sunk in.
Yeah,
I think I even said to Jordy, "Is this the thing? Am I going mad?" But
did somebody hack his email? Is that a thing?
Because that's the only logical explanation.
No. Well, no. You have, you found all your different mountaintops. You've kept moving up. Actually, I have to say this. I think it'd be really cool. Like, because you're a fan too. I think it'd be pretty cool when you're all said and done with Injection. If there was like a Injection by Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey, and Jordi Belair, and Phonographics, omnibus. That's a cool mountaintop. Anyway.
Probably will. I'd say, because it's a weird thing to talk about, but a lot of image books will do like a hardcover after 10 issues. The first two,
sure, yeah,
books, but Injection is specifically going to be 5 trades. So I was thinking you can't really do a hardcover for two arcs, then another 2 arcs, and then
have this 5th arc that's just like its own
exactly.
book.
Yeah, so I think realistically, because I was asking Warren, and effectively he didn't give a shit. Like, but me, being like the art fantasist, of wanting to have a hard, because I don't have any hardcover I have is with Marvel, and they're all I don't draw all those. Like the Deadpool one just came out, but that's me and Mike Hawthorne, and massive respect to Mike Hawthorne, but I'd really love to have one that's just me.
Yeah.
But now I'm probably going to wait for 3 years until we finish the Injection series, and then maybe do. Realistically, that's probably the best thing to do. I don't think it would be particularly fair to get people to shell out for 2 hardcovers and then a spare bit at the end. So it probably will, do the omnibus of the whole thing. But no, you're right. That's another goal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like I was saying, as a fan, that's just got to be something that's pretty cool. You could put that up on your bookshelf and see that.
God, man, yeah, that's like, especially with us artists, all we want is like the most flattering delivery system, with like gold embossed steel case. That's what you absolutely fetishize it to a degree, but yeah, I mean, especially, it was somewhat unsatisfying seeing all my Marvel work in trade form, and like, regardless of how much work I did on the book, my name be at the end after like maybe a fill-in guy or something, and that after months and months and months on something, that kind of gets to you. So double shipping and stuff really frustrated me for that reason. But at the very same time, if I'm being realistic, I probably succeeded at Marvel because of double shipping, because the whole reason I started there was because they needed a fill-in guy on Thunderbolts, and then more than just a fill-in issue, they needed fill-in arcs. So as much as I would be somewhat frustrated with the process, ultimately it's probably what got me there at the same time. So as much as I was saying that I was fortunate to have those opportunities, probably double shipping created the opportunity for me to have more work there. So it all kind of
works together to work out.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I just recently published the survey for comic artists, and then there's also the post by Brian Trilla, and it seems like there's a lot of artists that are openly wondering whether or not comics are a great idea, at least financially. But you've found success. You've reached your mountaintops, and you've been able to make a career out of it at the same time. Do you think that there has been a key for you at all in turning your career into a financial success?
I think I may be a good example, but not necessarily out of a crazy Machiavellian plan. I just just the right opportunities at the right times, and I think saying no to the right projects has probably been a good benefit to me. I think one smart decision I made was when I was working in the UK market, I was offered 28 days later, and that was for a bad rate from what I was being paid in the UK. It was like maybe just more than half of what I was making in the UK. But I had to kind of like look at my career and where I wanted to be. Like, I think at least having a goal, like knowing what you want, you may not actually achieve that goal, but at least if you're moving that direction, I feel that you'll move faster rather than just kind of like being more complacent and just taking whatever is available to you. So knowing that I wanted to get into the American market meant that, well, if I take essentially a pay cut, but I am on a monthly book, that will only help me be visible to a much, much larger audience than just doing graphic novels for like the library market in the UK. It's a very limited. So while there's more money, if in the short term, it's, there's only so much my work will get out there. Whereas if I take a pay cut effectively, I can reach a much larger audience, and hopefully that would pay off. Now it did, but that was a risk.
Yeah.
You know, and I effectively had to take a pay cut in order to be Seymour. You really shouldn't have to make that decision. All it would have been great if it just was like more money and more exposure. But that was a decision on my part, and I went in with my eyes open. You know, worked Boom for a while, and then, you know, thankfully I got an offer for Marvel, and then leapfrogged there, and things have been much better. But I mean, you know, I can't say like that was a plan that was guaranteed to work. You know, I could have easily just had to, you know, not got any offers and stay there. I was offered plenty of creator-owned books in the last few years, but I had to be very careful about, you know, is it worth the time and goodwill I'd built up at Marvel?
Right.
Which I was trying to make sure that I had a reputation for being reliable, for being good to work with, for being, you know, somebody who is not going to be a pain, somebody who will do good work. It takes a while to build that up, and after 4 years or 3 years or however long I'd been there when I was getting various offers, it was kind of like, if I know I can do it's knowing your worth sometimes. Like I knew I could do a monthly book, definitely, because I've been doing it for ages, and I think that I didn't realize from seeing Geordie work with a lot of artists who were, you know, clearly unreliable. I realized actually the fact that I can even do a book on time is actually a massive
advantage.
Yeah, big advantage. Whereas my opinion had been like, oh well, that's just your job and that's what you should do, you know. And so I was like, oh, actually, I have an edge by being on time. And if I'm going to use that, let's just say my work is terrible. Let's just both agree to that right now, David.
Agreed.
So yeah, thank you. So my work's terrible, but I'm on time. So that is actually something that's very valuable. But if I could do that and do good work, that's two very valuable things. So if I'm going to basically, if that's like a chord I'm going to pull, and maybe like move away from Marvel and do creator-owned work, I'd want to make sure it's the maximum possible return.
Yeah.
So I basically held. I mean, it sounds really full of myself, but I just held out for as long as I could for a better deal. Now, admittedly, I didn't think I was going to get a Warren Ellis, but I just was like, well, look, the work I'm getting at Marvel is good and it pays decent, and I enjoy it. So why not just keep working away? And if a better offer comes along, it does. Thankfully, it did. But again, there was no guarantee of that. But had I taken that other opportunity, I may not be where I am right now. Like it's really hard. I can say that I've managed my career in a good fashion, but ultimately it's dealing with the opportunities given to you at a specific time. Had I gone and worked with, I remember I was talking to Alice Cott recently, and I realised he sent me a pitch years ago before I ever worked in the American market. Mm-hmm. Who knows, had me and him done something then, how things could have changed. You just don't know, but all you can do is like look at your situation, where you want to be, and try think long term. I mean, you can never ever plan what actually will happen, but if you can at least think of like I was saying, having a goal of where you would like to be, I think it'll help you. It'll help inform your decisions. And also, it's kind of stupid advice, but I found that following my gut has been really, really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Like if I get an offer, sometimes I remember like sometimes Jordy would be like, "Oh, that'd be great, you should do that," but my gut reaction is like, "I don't think so." Mm-hmm. It's very, very weird how that served me very, very well.
Well, and I think one thing that you said that is pretty advantageous or something that more artists should do, and I can't say that every artist doesn't do this, but, you know, the ability to say no, obviously, you know, if you don't have any jobs or anything like that, saying yes is much more attractive. But if you have the option to say no and you utilize it strategically, it seems like that can really be advantageous for you.
Yeah, it's weird. I went to New York Comic Con last October, and Injection had been announced, so I wasn't doing any more mainstream Marvel work. The really great offers I got at that show, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not because I'm brilliant. I think partly it was because I wasn't available. People wanted me more, you know. Yeah. I got offered like this thing at DC. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And like, I was talking to somebody at Vertigo. I'm like, holy crap, I would have killed for this offer like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Marvel stuff that I would have like loved to have done. As like I've been wanting to do that for fucking years, you know, yeah. Things like that. And it's not because like all of a sudden I was this amazing artist. It's just because I had the balls Although it's very easy to again very easy to be brave when you've got a Warren Ellis book on your.
Right.
It's still that it's not that I'm incredibly brave. Thankfully, the decision was there was just no way to say no to that offer, so I took that offer. But because I had, it took me off the market, and that made me more. I think that just made me more desirable because it wasn't a case of like maybe he'll do that or let's put him on that. It's like, will he do that?
Yeah.
That's an entirely different question. Yeah, just follow just through. Like, I would have generally be so like amenable and hardworking. I would take, if I could possibly do a job, I'd take it. I was doing like Northlanders and Thunderbolts at the same time. I was doing Deadpool and Conan at the same time. Like I would found it very hard to say no.
Yeah.
And because I'm in a situation of doing creator-owned book, I knew I had to put everything into that. I had to say no way, way more in the last year, and it's amazing how it kind of puts you on a. All of a sudden, it forces you to be way more selective. Like I've had a dream job offered to me, but I was on issue 3 of Injection. I'm like, well, I can't stop in order to do this, and I was been forced to say no. But definitely, no is an incredibly powerful tool for an artist. Especially if it's a case of like, will you work at a lower rate? Right? Because if you say no, if you say yes, then that means you're at that rate, and I mean, it's you'd be surprised. I think because you're so worried that if you say no, they'll never ask again. But in most cases, they will ask again because if they wanted you enough to ask the first time, they're bound to want you again the second time.
Mm-hmm.
The way they'll say no is, I think this is good advice for artists. The one way they're guaranteed to not hire you again is if you take a book that you're not ready for or can't deliver, and drop the ball, screw the book, screw the editor. That's one way of never being asked back again.
Yeah, it seems like that, like when you look at some of the biggest artists in comics right now, like let's just choose two, like Greg Capullo on Batman, and then you have Charlie.
Never heard of him.
Well, he's doing this book with this guy named Scott Snyder. I don't know if you've heard of him.
But,
they made a movie about it. I don't know. I think it was called The Dark Knight. I don't know.
I think it was called Spider-Man.
Anyways, and then Charlie Adler, who's doing this. I think it's a comic book adaptation of that TV show, The Walking Dead.
Oh, I've seen the show. All right, yeah. I didn't know it was a comic.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty. It's not very good, to be totally honest.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think one of the biggest things that they have going for them is that they're crazy reliable. Like they always churn out work. It's seemingly on time. I mean, I remember they were doing 2 issues a month for like 4 months on The Walking Dead, and Charlie was just like it seemed, or at least to my knowledge, was hitting every deadline because the comics are coming out on time. And I don't know. I think you're right. It's like sometimes, I'm not saying that they're doing bad work, but it's like the ability to show that you're reliable and that you can turn out work when you say you're going to is like one of the most attractive features you can have in a creative profession.
Yeah, it's no, absolutely. I think there's a very delicate, and speaking from an artist's point of view, which I seem to just only do. I said that should just be an exclaimer for everything. It's like, do you want more? Do you want chicken or beef? Well, from an artist's point of view.
Well, what are you supposed to do from a veterinarian's perspective?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, definitely, if you're reliable, great way to get work. Really great way to get work. Because not all of us are amazing talents. And, as much as I'd like to think I'm a really good artist, I'm clearly not the best in the industry. I'm just, and if you can develop a reputation for being reliable and for being good to work with, that goes a long way too. And dependable really goes a long way. Super talented really goes a long way. I think that the sweet spot is being the best illustrator you can possibly be under a certain time constraints. So there's guys like J.H. Williams who are amazing illustrators, but it's going to take them forever to draw a book.
Right.
That's fine. There's nothing absolutely nothing wrong with that. Whereas other illustrators who maybe are great, really good storytellers that can knock out pages, but ultimately because they don't really have that visual flair or that interesting voice, you don't really see them as illustrators. You just kind of read their comics and go, "Oh, that was fine." It doesn't blow you away. But there's such a demand on such a high level of illustration in comics now because there are so many amazing illustrators working in comics now. You need to be better than that. So reliability just isn't just good enough. You can definitely have maybe a 3-year career of just belting through comics. But if your work isn't memorable, then you're not. It's a very short career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like with any job. You have to have like a composite of skills and abilities to make the best career for yourself. But it does seem like it's something, especially given the fact it's a monthly medium, or for the most part monthly. It seems like that is definitely something that's advantageous. Well. So the next thing, we talked about some of the keys, for finding financial success, but it seems like there's a lot of either real or perceived roadblocks out there for artists finding, like that financial success in comics. What do you think the biggest ones are, from an artist perspective?
How do you mean?
Oh, so like, do you think that there are real things that block artists from reaching, like, making a career out of comics? Or do you think, a lot of it's just based off of choices you make?
I mean, I think in some ways you need to be realistic about how fast you are. I think with any job, if you're given a rate, no matter what rate it is for whatever publisher, if you're being offered $100 a page and it takes you 3 days to draw a page, then that doesn't make any financial sense at all, because you just can't live at that rate. And that'll either force you to try and negotiate a better rate, or for you to work faster, or both. If I think you just need to be honest with yourself. There's plenty of cases where people take work, and even if it's a good rate or whatever, they're just not realistic about what their capabilities are. Like, can you do a book in a month? Sure, but they don't know. Can you do a book in 2 months? Sure, but they don't know. Most of us generally will just say sure and just work our asses off to get it done. But some people, maybe they've got kids, maybe they're living at home, or they have a full-time job, then they can't work at that rate. It's very hard to say no to something if it's your first opportunity. If you've got a full-time job and you're offered a book, you're not going to go no because I've got a full-time job, because then they'll probably never contact you again.
Right.
Because if you're not taking it seriously enough to dedicate the next month to it, then why would I hire you?
Right.
You can't really go about that. It's more of a problem, I think, when you're starting out, definitely. But again, it's just a case of knowing what you can and can't do. Like when I was offered Northlanders and I was doing Thunderbolts, the schedule I had for Thunderbolts was as such, and I was like, okay, well, I have a certain amount of time. It just means I've got to work my ass off. But I knew I could do it, and I did. If they'd offered me more issues after that, which I knew they wouldn't because the book was ending,
right?
Then I probably couldn't have, because I couldn't have gone back to Thunderbolts and then gone right back straight away. It's just a case of, like, if you can push yourself to the edge, but you need to know what the edge is, otherwise you're just going to drive right off that cliff. I'm terrible for metaphors, but I throw them in but they don't make any sense. But I think that's ultimately the best lesson you can, because no matter what job you're offered, no matter what rate you're offered, no matter what kind of time frame you're offered, if you just are not aware of your limitations, and in some cases, for me personally, I had a very good sense of my limitations, but I really, really did push them for a while. I was doing more work than I really should have been doing. I was capable of doing it, but I got to a point where I was getting near burnout.
Right.
I think it's a problem for artists in general, because with books being relentlessly thrown out at whatever at intense schedules, the only people really burning out, or the artists will burn out first. It's going to happen for writers too. But it's because it's very difficult to maintain that level of productivity. You see guys like being really, really productive, and they can do really, really good work, but unless, they'll eventually get to a point where they're going to have to stop. So for me, I feel like what I did is I was basically just like firing lasers all over the place, really intense and knocking them out. But now I'm trying to like take a step back and have a very focused beam.
Yeah.
Again, metaphors, not my thing.
No, anything that involves lasers is great. I love it.
There you go. It's just going to be laser metaphors from now on.
I think that's a really good path for you.
Thanks, lasers. I'm just going to quit comics. Lasers. You'll just be like a traveling salesman. I think that's the case where, I know I have the liberty of being able to, because I'm working at Image Comics and I'm doing a book with Warren, yada, yada, yada. I can afford to take a step back. I don't need to have something on the stands every single month. I can do a couple of covers. They'll be good enough. And I can concentrate on trying to do really refined storytelling, that is my best work. But that's having gone to the stage where like I realize I can't keep doing what I'm doing because I'm going to burn out. I hope that answers your question.
No, it totally does. And I actually, you mentioned how it happens with writers too. Like, I am so shocked that like Jonathan Hickman is still alive right now, because he's, after doing seemingly like 5 years of Avengers comics in 3 years, and then also doing East of West and Dying in the Dead and Manhattan Projects and everything like that. It's like, I don't know, sometimes it seems like the workload that some people put on them is just so staggering. And that seems like that's one of the main reasons why you declined all those projects while you're doing Injection, because it seems like you want to focus more on doing that as well as you possibly can.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Mike Norton at one stage, and Revival was doing really well, and I think I said to him, because I knew it was a longer project, I said, would you, if you could give yourself a piece of advice before starting it, what would it be? And he said, like, don't do anything else. Because I think that when he did a Revival, things were going really well, and he got lots of offers, and I think Mike and I are similar in the way that we'd be really workhorses. And I definitely, I've done the same thing where I've taken, if there's a gig like 2 pages of Batman, I'll do it. But I think with creator-owned stuff, because people said, like, people have been asking me, oh, are you not going to do any more Marvel stuff? I'd love to do more Marvel stuff because I love working at Marvel, but there's not much point in doing a half-assed job on 2 books.
Yeah.
It would be much, much better for me and for whatever book I work on to give it everything. So I will give Injection everything, and then when that's over, I'll, maybe do more Marvel stuff or do another creator thing. Who knows? But best to focus and do your best work, because knocking out half-assed work only means that you're flooding the market with a lot of bad work that has your name on it.
I think you're exactly right, because when you're flooding the market with stuff that is lower than what you're capable of, it not only it's bad advertising for yourself, but it's also like, I don't know, I guess it just doesn't seem like it's good for anybody at that point.
Well, it would have been. I can see why. I'll speak from artists, but the same thing with writers too. If you're trying to bang out like scripts and stuff that you're not 100% happy with,
right,
then then the fan reception is like, oh, well, he doesn't write this book as well as he writes another book, but maybe it's just because you push yourself too hard. It's very difficult to try and keep a level of exposure and attention on the work that you're doing, and keep the quality level up. I think that goes again to knowing your limit. I mean, if a company is paying, if you're like Jonathan Hickman and they love what you do and they're doing 2 books for them, and they're like, what about a third? Great. What about a fourth? Great. I mean, they're going to. It doesn't make sense for them to not get more out of you. They will naturally get more out of you. Not because they're an evil corporation, just because that makes sense. Why wouldn't they want to capitalize on that more?
Right.
Ultimately, the responsibility is on you of knowing what you can and can't do. It just comes down to that, really,
Yeah, it really does. Well,
like even like Jodie's had a problem too, because she works on like great creator-owned books, and she works on books for like Marvel and DC, and schedules are different, and different creators are different relationships, and it's one thing for me as an artist to like be that focused razor beam, but like if you're a writer or you're a colorist, there's more variables for each job that you do, and it's unfortunately you generally have to learn the hard way of like being in a rut and try to claw your way out of it sometimes. That is the trappings of success, I guess. And there's probably some artists who don't have much jobs listening to this going like fucking wankers, but poor us. That's our life. But ultimately, especially if you're in a position where you're getting great opportunities, you don't want to mess those up. You want to capitalize the most on those, because if you get the opportunity to work on a great book with whoever, like Jeff Parker or whatnot, you don't want to drop the ball on any of those opportunities, because then that's just going to affect your career. If you mess that opportunity up, it's not like you're going to get a better job offer after that.
Right, exactly. And I suppose some people might be taking what we're talking about as like, oh, these guys, they're speaking from the 1%. But I do think that, like, speaking from your position as somebody who's built your career from a very relatable position, like you start out drawing your own X-Men comics at home, like that's something that people can see, and I think there's value there. And in like your advice, like what you're saying is pretty universal. It works not just for, as you were saying, not just for artists, but it's also for writers, for letters, colorists, anybody. So, but you've spoken a lot about the inequality that like comic artists face, like both financially and just in the broad scheme of things, like the comics internet, for example. Do you think that there's anything that artists could do to make the comic art world a better one for themselves? Like anything that you could think of in specific?
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this a bit because it just started out for me noticing these things and then bugging me more and more and more. And I realized I don't think it's a case where I'm noticing it more. I think it was just happening more. Mm-hmm. But I think, like, I'm not really into the public shaming culture.
Right.
If I don't like something, going, what the fuck, and complaining. But I think it's a balance. Like I remember, I was going to like post something and give specific examples, and I remember Jordy saying like maybe that's not fair, and trying to figure out is actually say going on Twitter and saying this is a problem with an example. Is it a good illustrating the problem? I think is good, and showing examples, because otherwise it could just sound like I'm moaning about anything.
Right.
And I've been complaining seeing artists not credited, and in fairness, I'm not really in that position. I'm generally fine. I have not seen anybody doing a review for Moon Knight or Injection that mentions Warren and doesn't mention me, and generally mentions Geordie too. So it's not a case of like me complaining about my situation. I'm doing fine. It's when I see other people where they're working, I know they're working hard in a book, and the writer is the person who that they talk about, and the artist isn't. It always bugs me when it happens to somebody else more than it happens to me. It happened a couple of times to somebody else. I remember being really annoyed. I think it was for a friend of mine. So I looked who wrote the article online, and I emailed them and I said, by the way, this artist is actually the one, not this person. And within a few hours got a response, and they rectified it. Whereas there was a different situation where I just complained a lot about it online and nothing happened, because I guess they weren't looking at their Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't think necessarily complaining online is a solution, and maybe just actually reaching out and contacting people. But I think we need to train the comics internet to pay more attention in general, because I think that ultimately the people who are digesting press releases and articles and interviews, the more it's fed to them that things are more writer-centric than artist-centric, we'll just train them to be looking at that. And I know when you were at Multiversity, they did like Artist August, and I would assume they were the least read articles that you guys did. But I mean, I certainly appreciated that there was a site that was doing it, because it was bucking the trend somewhat. I think there definitely is something wrong with the comics journalism aspect there that should be rectified. But as regards artists, like, and getting better deals and getting better page rates and all that, I think there needs to be more dialogue mm-hmm. within the creative community. Nobody likes to talk about how much money they're making. I have to credit Sean Murphy, actually, when I was working on 28 Days Later, and he was doing like Joe the Barbarian, and he was very open and honest with, the dealings that he had or the rates that he was trying to get, or that he did get, and that kind of openness and honesty was really beneficial to me. Like what I was saying before, somebody might be going like, "Oh, boo-hoo!" Like I remember he was talking about that stuff, and I was like, "Poor fucking you," working with Grant Morrison, wanker. But then, within 2 years, I was in similar positions, and then those were big decisions I had to make, and were clearly at the forefront of my mind. Mm-hmm. But like him having that open, honest opinion, and I certainly have been like that with other artists, and you don't want to go up to somebody and go, "How much money are you making?" Because it's none of my business. But I do certainly think when you're starting out, you're so worried and scared, and you don't want to shake the boat. The phrase?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not shake the boat. That's
I don't remember.
Stir the waters, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't want to cause a fuss, of course, and you don't want to upset anybody. And a lot of people are very, very protective over the money that they're making. And it's not that you should just need to air all your personal business, but I do think that the more silent everybody is on these things, the more maybe the companies get something out of it. If there's a company that doesn't pay very well and nobody knows this, I'm not sure that nobody talking about it really helps anybody except the company take advantage of artists.
Right.
I think in a more open dialogue between artists of what is fair, what isn't fair, and artists being harder on themselves and not having more sense of self-worth, because if you think that you're worth $45 a page, that's not good for you. It means those are the offers that you'll take seriously, and they're not. That's not a good offer.
No.
But if you don't believe in yourself, or if you think that you should just take whatever you're getting, it just leaves you open and vulnerable. And if there was more dialogue with people of like what is a fair rate across the board, and there was somebody they could ask. I mean, I had the benefit of being able to ask people from striking friendships at conventions and social media and whatnot. The more information you have, the more you can protect yourself, basically, I remember I did a contract thing with Marvel at one stage, and I just didn't know like what I should ask for. And then later on, I maybe had another, there was another opportunity to do with contracts, and I was way more informed, and I knew what was fair and what wasn't fair. My attitude beforehand would have been like, sure, whatever, okay, because eager to please. But I mean, that's great, and you should be eager to please and want it to be good to work with. But number one, you got to look after yourself. And if you're not, I'm not saying you should just think that you're brilliant, but if you don't have a realistic view of what you're worth, then you'll always be undervaluing yourself, and therefore others will undervalue you too.
I do think one thing that was common between both the comics internet thing you were saying and also the pay is that it seems like there's I think for the comics internet in specific, like a big reason why so many people talk, so many people talk to writers and speak about writers primarily, isn't necessarily because they all want to be comic writers. It's a lot of it is because writers are the people that they're speaking to. Like writers reach out, writers do all that stuff, and I feel like to a certain degree, like communication can be an issue for artists. I'm not saying you, and I'm not saying every artist.
No, I think you might have a point. I remember I when Georgie started coloring, she was one of the very few colorists on Twitter, and she's one of the very few people like showing work, and I think Matt Hollingsworth is on there and Matt Wilson and stuff. But I think there's a similarity in that regard. Whereas because colorist wasn't really seen as very much of a respected profession, perhaps. They just shied away and didn't see themselves as being worthy of any kind of attention. But now you see how things have changed in the last 3 years, where a lot of colorists have a Twitter profile. A lot of them didn't go to shows either.
Yeah.
But now they're going to shows and they have banners. A lot of it is about perception, and if people see you making the work, they will see you more as a creator. Whereas maybe a lot of people hide away. A lot of artists do hide away. We crave attention, but it's undignified to be just looking for glory and attention all the time. But ultimately, if you don't have a spotlight on your work, then nobody knows where to find it or even knows what it looks like. There's definitely an issue there. There is definitely a responsibility on artists to protect their own sense of worth, much in the way of like having some kind of public profile, or believing in what you're worth. I think it's certainly all connected, or even like, I'll be honest, I'm glad you were asking the question about artists' rights and all that, and I complain about it on Twitter, but I'll be honest, I don't get a lot of support.
Right.
I think a lot of people will complain with me, but do not share the I don't want to say complaint, but like the issue of that this is happening across the board, and I think in fairness, Jamie McKelvey is one of the few people who's actually been bringing it up as well.
Yeah.
I think I saw somebody do it to him, and I complained about it, and he appreciated that or whatnot. But he's talking about it now, and I'm glad. But I not that I like need everyone to support me on this, but I'm not doing this for me. It's for the benefit of everybody, and unless other people start noticing this, pointing this out, and saying it's not acceptable, or pushing for more for their own worth, I mean, it's not going to happen otherwise.
Yeah.
Why would it possibly? It's in nobody's interest except the artists to push for more for their proper credit, or even, like, you know, just looking for glory and attention all the time. But ultimately, if you don't have a spotlight on your work, then nobody knows where to find it or even knows what it looks like. There's definitely an issue there. I think proper rights or equal rights, I should say, and in a lot of cases, writers pushing for it. I know a lot of cases even with publishers or writers are the people pushing for their artists. That's great. I mean, you need help from writers, but artists need to push for themselves and push for their colorists too, because if we can't even get proper credit for the work that we do, then what the hell is that going to say for colorists and for letterers? I've been very supportive of how colorists should get credit for their work, but even if you can't get it for the guy drawing the book, what hope is there down the line?
I think one of you brought up Jordy's experiences online and everything, and I think one of the biggest moments for colorists in the last few years was when she was, I don't remember what con it was, but some con declined her being referenced as a guest or something like that, and it led to the whole Colorist Appreciation Day thing.
Yeah, that was crazy. There was, but even at that, I think Jordy's like me similarly, where she didn't publicly shame. No. And she didn't say who it was. And a lot of people were like, you should say who it was, burn it to the ground. She was classy. She didn't do that.
Right.
But she was not considered a guest, but it was when it happened to another colorist is when she lost her shit.
Yeah.
Because I think, and maybe it's a case of because we don't believe in ourselves that much, it's easier to be upset for a friend being mistreated than yourself.
Yeah.
I think if you're mistreated, maybe you're like, oh, well, you don't want to fight for yourself, but somebody else, you'll jump to protect a friend. And that was amazing. That was really cool because I thought she dealt with it in a really, really classy way, and it turned into something quite positive. And I think it was a turning point for a lot of colorists. I see a lot more colorists being visible now than before. And I'm not saying Jordy changed the industry, but I certainly think it helped a lot of shine a spotlight on the medium. I mean, inkers are dying out and colorists are replacing them. They're becoming more and more and more important. And it's certainly changed, I feel, the zeitgeist of what colorists are, what's expected from colorists or what colorists deserve. And I think it's becoming more and more relevant, especially in creator-owned comics, because if you are an artist and you want your work to shine, you need the best colorist you possibly can.
Yeah.
And if you're going to crap all over colorists, then no one's going to want to work with you, and your work's going to look crap. It's in everyone's interest.
Yeah. Well, no, and it kind of seems like that's the same case for artists and for anything too. It's just it seems like it's in everyone's interest for everyone to be as respected as possible, because if that's the magic of comics. The magic of comics comes from the writing working with the art and turning it into the best narrative it possibly can be.
Absolutely. It's either one person writing and drawing a comic of themselves, like a unique vision, or it's somebody who's writing a comic and somebody who's illustrating a comic, and together that collaboration results in something unique. Not every artist and every writer together does something amazing, but sometimes it's that it's a collaboration between a certain pair at which comes up with something exciting. And that doesn't, you need both to happen to make good comics. And one, sometimes if I complain about it, people will be like, oh, well, what about the 90s and this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that writers or artists should dominate the industry.
No.
But it is a visual medium, and without the visuals, it's not a comic. And both should get equal credit for the work involved. And if it's made into a movie, it should be both of their movies, not the just the writers. It's not a case of I think that we should be the kings. I just think that we should be right up there next to the other person. That's all.
Yeah. No, I don't think that you're trying to say that you need to get Stephen Platt's page rate from the 90s. I don't know if you ever saw that, but
I've never heard about that.
It was ridiculous. Anyways,
but also, sorry, just to follow very slightly. It also, I think, is very important for the longevity of an artist. There's so many cases of artists who fall out of popularity, or their work isn't in vogue anymore, whereas writers will tend to have a much longer shelf life because of the different range of books they can do. I can do one book, I can do 10, 12 issues a year. Writers can do so much more. And if you're going to be in a position like that, you really need to be benefiting as much as possible. If I do a book with Warren, I'm doing a book with Warren, and Warren will do another book, and he'll be just fine. If I do, when I eventually do a book without Warren, I'm sure I'll have a lot more attention because I worked with Warren. But if the work from that collaboration isn't valued, then people are just going to go and follow a writer and not follow an artist to the same degree. And for the amount of, and it's not a competition between writers and artists, but like if I can only do this for the next 3 years, I should get 50% credit for it because, if anything, I need that a little bit more because I can only take so much material along with me in my back catalogue, as it were, And for all of that to be remembered as one person's work, and I want to take myself and Warren out of this because that's not really an issue. But if you have any artist works with any writer and the zeitgeist is of following a writer, then ultimately an artist is just disposed afterwards, and a year's worth of work, which is maybe a third or 25 or 1/4 of what the writer's output was, is just gone like that, and it's very hard to maintain a career of longevity there's not a lot of artists manage that, I think I'm doing fine and things keep going the way I'm going, don't anticipate any problems. But if the work isn't valued as a collaboration and it's more as something that supports the words, that is really going to hurt artists in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
if that makes any sense.
No, at that point, like if it's not that, then it's basically just a prose book with some pictures in it, and like that's going too far. It takes, like I said, it really is the collaboration between everyone that makes comics special, and it's kind of incredible when one aspect gets so much more, and like you were saying, it's not. The vast majority of writers want the best for artists and colorists and letterists.
Except the wankers. There are absolutely wankers, but for the most part, in my experience anyway, I've never worked with a writer that I hated or disrespected me that way. But I'm aware there are some out there, and you know what? I'm not going to work with them. But for the most part, absolutely, because even most writers know if they want a book to do well, they want it to be drawn really well, and so they want the best guy they possibly can to draw it. It's in their own interest.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much for coming on, Declan. I really appreciate it. And let's chat again soon.
Sure, I can clearly talk all fucking day.